We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, and we are starting Siman Kuf Mem Hey in the halachot of Kriyat Sefer Torah and of Kaf Chet Amud Aleph of the regular Prince of Mishna Berura, the halachot of translating the Kriyat Torah in public. The Gemara says this in Megillah, in Masechet Megillah Daf Chaf Gimal Amud Bet. The Gemara says that in the time of Chazal there was a meturgeman. When you read the Torah publicly, it was a whole production. Nowadays, people get frustrated with if the tefillah takes 5 extra minutes. Back in the day, they would translate every single pasuk. They would stop, translate, explain it, then they would read the next pasuk, and so on and so forth. Of course, the tefillah would take a much longer time, but it would be more productive in such a way that people walked home with understanding of the parasha in a proper way. Imagine to yourself, especially when it gets to the halachot of Tumah v'Tahara or the korbanot, they walked home with a wealth of knowledge of what the Torah actually is speaking about. Bimei Chachmei Gemara says the Shulchan Aruch hayu noagim letargem k'dei she'yavinu ha'am. They would translate it in order for people to understand it. Nowadays, of course, we have translation. Next to it, you have chumashim in all languages translated, so it makes it a little easier. Ein hakoreh rashai likro leturgeman yoter mipasuk echad. You cannot say a whole paragraph and then let the meturgeman translate. It has to be pasuk by pasuk. You read one pasuk, you stop, he translates, and so on and so forth. The translator cannot start doing his job. Usually they would get somebody that has an extremely clear and loud voice in order to make sure everyone understands and hears him. So he can't start translating until the Baal Koreh already has finished the pasuk completely. And the Baal Koreh also has the same restriction. He cannot start the next pasuk until he's actually finished. So if you think that he's going too long, you can't just start hinting to him that he's being too long. You have to wait for him until he finishes. And the Baal Koreh should not be much louder, clearly louder than the Metargem. They should have really the same tone of voice. ולא המתרגם יותר מהקורא. ואין הקורא רשאי לסייע למתרגם שלא יאמרו תרגום כתוב בתורה. And the Baal Koreh, looking in the Torah, should not be helping the metargem in the translation when he has a hiccup, because then people will say, oh, the Targum is written in the Chumash, right? And the Kaf Chaim writes the metargem is not allowed to look in the Chumash either when he's translating, because of course of the same reason. It says the Mishna Berura, מגן אברהם מצדד לומר, משעה שנפתח הספר תורה אפילו לא התחיל עדיין הקורא לקרות, גם כן אסור. The Magen Avraham says that you have the minhag of translating Bilashon Targum, which would be in the time of Chazal in Aramaic, ki leshonam hayu aramit. Their language was Aramaic, so that's why the Targum was in that way as well. Now, how about Targum of Yonatan ben Uziel? The Gemara says in Masechet Sukkah Daf Kaf Chet that 80 Talmidim of Hillel HaZaken, the greatest of them was Yonatan ben Uziel. He was a tremendous person, right? Tremendous person. So how about the Targum of Yonatan ben Uziel? So first of all, in important parentheses, the Targum of Yonatan ben Uziel is not so clear if it is, like Maran Chida writes, actually from Yonatan ben Uziel. The correct way would be Hamiyuchas le Yonatan ben Uziel. It's not so clear if he wrote actually that translation of the Chumash. We know he wrote on Nevi'im, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu stopped him from getting into Ketuvim because the secrets of the time of Mashiach is hidden there, and Hashem did not want him to reveal those secrets. But nevertheless, the Targum on Chumash, we're not told that Yonatan ben Uziel wrote anything on Chumash, but nevertheless, we do have a Targum of Yonatan ben Uziel, so hence is a little bit questionable whether or not he's actually the author of that or not. But there are many who write that that's not considered, his Targum is not considered the proper Targum when it comes to this topic. So it says, The Mishnah Berura Chafetz Chaim writes, the reason that you have all these details of he should stop, then he shouldn't start before him, is because we don't want this tzibur, the community, to get confused. You have two people up there, and if they don't have proper harmony with each other, it's going to be very difficult for the tzibur to focus on listening to Kriyat Torah and understanding the Targum that comes with it, and hence the restrictions. Why is it that he can't be louder than the other person? Because it says that the call of Hashem and Moshe was in a harmonic way, and therefore Bekolo shel Moshe, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was answering with the same tone of voice as Moshe himself, and therefore we do kind of the same thing to make sure that is in a harmonic way. We learn it from Moshe Rabbeinu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. So says the Mishnah Berura, well, let's do the next two seifim of Shulchan Aruch. Katan metargem al yedei gadol, aval eno kavod legadol shetargem al yedei katan. Now, a katan who reads the Torah, a gadol could be metargem. The katan who could be metargem al yedei gadol, standing next to the gadol and translating. Aval eno kavod legadol shetargem al yedei katan. But it's not respectful for a Baal Koreh that is an adult to have a katan, a minor, translating for him. And says the Shulchan Aruch, Haidna lo na'agu letargem. Nowadays, already in the time of Shulchan Aruch, 500 plus years ago, says that the minhag is not to do the Targum anymore, mishum demato elet betargum kevan she'en mevinim oto. Because the problem is, after post-Babylonian era, people do not necessarily understand Aramaic. Now you have classes for Gemara for beginners, even for those who are Hebrew-speaking individuals, because now everyone understands Aramaic. It's almost the reverse. Now more people understand Hebrew than those who understand Aramaic. It used to be, when they lived in Bavel, everybody spoke the spoken language Aramaic, so women and children and regular laymen understood Aramaic, and therefore the Targum was very valuable because it actually gave them the opportunity to understand. But nowadays, if you would be saying the Targum, more people would be confused than understand anything, and hence we stopped the Targum. Says the Shulchan Aruch, she'en mevinin oto ve'en lomar nilmad mehem lefaresh kam anachnu lam belashon she'avinu. So of course the obvious question is, why don't we do it in English? Why don't we do it in a language that people understand? For Moroccans in the language they understand, like, do it in Arabic, in French, in English, in any language that they speak. Says the Mishnah Berura, the Shani Targum shenitkam beruach hakodesh. It's not that you have to translate only for people to understand. The Targum of Onkelos was done beruach hakodesh. It was something that is inspired, divinely inspired, in such way that connects with the psukim in the deepest way to translate them properly. That's why you find Rashi many times when it gets to difficult psukim, it just says ketargumo, like the Targum. It defers to the Targum. So not every English, Farsi, Arabic, French translation is going to have that plus, and therefore we just don't do it. V'ayim b'magen giborim. Shevi b'shem Tashpetz, he brings from the Tashpetz, who was a Rav in Algeria, called the Gedolei Rishonim, shkamatar reshut letargem b'lashon Targum. You could still do Targum if you want to, even though that people do not understand it, you still have the right, because it was a takana of Chazal, mishum shenitkan beruach hakodesh ela she'en Targum ma'akev. So it says, not a problem to do it in Aramaic, in Targum of Onkelos, but most people are not going to understand it, so therefore you don't have to necessarily do it. Now, why do you have even this Siman in Shulchan Aruch? if Shulchan Aruch says that we don't do that nowadays, right? So why even bring it in Shulchan Aruch? Only discusses things that are halacha le'maaseh, things that are applicable. So why would this halacha be discussed in Shulchan Aruch, even though that nowadays the minhag is not to do the translation? The Kaf HaChaim says that even nowadays there are certain kiyilot that still have the minhag of translating the haftarot, certain haftarot at least, and so on. And also, it's possible, very possible, that at some point you go back to that minhag as it was in the time of Chazal, and therefore it's not necessarily an obsolete halakha. Therefore, Shulchan Aruch brings it as halakha l'maaseh. That really concludes the Siman Kuf Mem Hey. We're going to start Kuf Mem Vav right now. Shelo daber b'shat kriya, that you cannot speak in the time of kriya. You can't speak in the time of Kriyat Torah. Says the Shulchan Aruch, asur laset ulhaniach sefer Torah kshu patuach. You cannot go out and leave the sefer Torah open. In other words, when the Torah is being read betzibur, you can't just get up and leave. That's asur. So disrespect to the sefer Torah. Aval ben gavra legavra, between two aliyot, between two people going up to the Torah, when one finished, the other one has not started. Shapir dam, if you need to use the facilities, if you need to go out, that is fine. Says the Mishna Berura, the pasuk says on this is something that we have had twice already in the Mishna Berura, that a person that leaves at the time that the Sefer Torah is open, the pasuk in Yeshaya is said about him. The pasuk in the beginning of Yeshayahu in Perek Aleph, it says, Ozvei Hashem yichlu. Those who leave Hashem, they would be nullified, they would be finished, they would be taken away. So that's someone that disrespects Hashem by leaving, by leaving the Beit Knesset when the Sefer Torah is open. U'metargeminan v'dishbaku oraita da Hashem yishtesun. We translate, speaking about translations, the translation of that pasuk is the people who leave the Torah of Hashem. Right? So if the Torah is open and you leave, oy vavoy, not good. Even if you have 100 people listening to the Sefer Torah, so it's not a minyan issue, because we said before, if you are the last person that breaks the minyan, and now there are 9 people, also this pasuk is said about them, because you cause the Shekhinah to leave when you're the 10th person and you break the minyan. So here it says, no, even if you have hundreds of people, but you turn your back to the Sefer Torah as it's open and it's being read, that's disrespectful. Even if you already heard the entire Kriyat Torah in a different minyan, you just came in to call somebody, came in to say something to the rabbi, and now you're in the shul as the Torah is being read, you can't say, well, there are 100 people here, I listened to the whole Kriyat Torah already, and therefore I'm going to leave. You can't do that. You have to wait until the aliyah finishes, and then you could turn your back and go out. Afilu achias. Aval ben gavra de gavra, between two people, it will be permissible. That's only if, of course, you have already 10 people besides you. You're not breaking the minyan, and then shapir dami, it's fine. And that's only if you're not going to miss further Kriyat Torah. In other words, if you're stepping out for a second and you're coming back in before the next aliyah starts, fine. But not in a way that you're going to be missing some part of the Kriyat Torah in the upcoming aliyah. And even that, says the Chafetz Chaim, is only when push comes to shove in extenuating circumstances. You don't just go out of the shul in the time of Kriyat Torah. So you see, it's more stringent than one would think. It's important halacha. A person that enters the Beit Knesset in the middle of Kriyat Torah, to call his friend, as we gave an example, right? So Kaf HaChaim says even he is included in this Isur, as we mentioned before. Even though that he listened, he's not part of the minyan, he already listened to Kriyat Torah, all of those things still will be applicable to him as well. And if you are called to go to complete a minyan, in the middle of Kriyat Torah, someone comes in and says, we need a 10th person in the next minyan, next door. So you have to leave the room in order to go help them with that. The Ben Ish Chai, Al Shalom, speaks about this she'ela, and he says mutar to go because he's also going to read the Torah over there. They want to call him as an aliyah over there. That's the case of the Ben Ish Chai. The Ish Chai says you could exit, you could go out. That's not a problem because you're going for the respect of Torah as well. So says the Kaf HaChaim also, and he adds that the minhag in Yerushalayim is if there's a minyan next door and they want to give you an aliyah, you go there, even though that it's middle of your Kriyat Torah. Someone that badly needs to use the facilities in the middle of Kriyat Torah, what do you do then? So, of course, if you could wait to go ben gavra le gavra, that would be the right thing to do. But if you can't wait, then there's a Shelot Tshuvot Kiseh Shlomo. He speaks about this she'ela, that if a person really needs to go and he's going to be transgressing the Isura Bal Shaksu, when a person needs to go to the bathroom and he holds, that the Gemara says that is both medically a problem and also halachically is Isura Bal Shaksu Nafshotechem, and therefore says the Kiseh Shlomo, leave, even in the middle. If you need to go in that situation and it can't be timed properly with the ben gavra le gavra, you go and you use the facilities. The fish asur bal shaksu chamur yoter misur lased or laniach sefer Torah kshu patuach. The prohibition of bal shaksu is a greater prohibition than leaving the sefer Torah open. And of course, here you're not turning your back to Hashem. You have a legitimate reason to do it, and therefore it will be mutar. Now, how about women? Do women also have this prohibition? So the Kaf HaChaim says they should also not leave, even though that's not so clear if they have the same level of prohibition. But it says they should not leave unless there's sorech gadol, unless there is real need for them to go out. Again, this is a matter of kavod for Torah, and the pasuk that the poskim bring, Ozvei Hashem Yechlu, is of course a very serious indication of how important this is, that when you leave the Torah, it's like you're turning your back to Hashem, you're disrespecting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Reb Chaim Pelagi writes that the entire Torah, like the Ramban writes in his Hakdama, he doesn't bring the Ramban, but the Ramban writes in his Hakdama on Chumash that the entire Torah is Shemotav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the names of Hashem. So turning your back to the Torah, writes Reb Chaim Pelagi, is like turning your back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a serious offense. It's not something that we want to do, and therefore you have to be more careful. But between two people, that would be permissible, that would be allowed. And when the Kohen, for instance, is going instead of Levi, because there's no Levi in the shul, so Enkan Kohen, Enkan Levi, Yamod Kohen Bimkom Levi. In such a case, the Kaf HaChaim writes that even though the same person is saying the second aliyah, still is considered ben gavra le gavra. It's the same person. The hefsek is shorter, and it's really the continuation. The same person is saying, but still it's two different aliyot. This is the Kaf HaChaim. You still could go out in the middle of the two, even though that you know that the Kohen is going to be saying the second bracha as well. There's no problem with that. Now, Kaf HaChaim also explains the reason behind this heter that we just mentioned, that between two people is okay if you're coming back quickly and you're not missing any of the Sefer Torah. He says because ben gavra le gavra, what do we do ben gavra le gavra? We close the Sefer Torah. We discussed that already before. And therefore, you're not leaving the Sefer Torah patuach. You're not leaving the Sefer Torah open because the Sefer Torah is closed. both for Ashkenazim and Sfaradim. We close it, we cover it with Ashkenazim as well. And he adds that even according to the minhag of the Sfaradim, that some don't close the box actually, but they cover it with a beautiful cloth with a mappa. Even that is considered a closed Sefer Torah. Therefore, it's not really considered a disrespect to the Sefer Torah, and it's mutar to go out because the kisui, the cover, is considered as though the Sefer Torah is closed. Now, if you got up, ben gavra le gavra, you got up from your seat to leave, and then before you got your feet out of the room, out of the shul, they opened the Sefer Torah for the next guy to get an aliyah. So now the Sefer Torah is open. So if the whole reason is because you're not leaving the Sefer Torah open, now that you are still in the room intending to leave, and now they open the Sefer Torah, so then what do? Right? Do you now go back and sit down, or are you still allowed to leave? So the Kaf Chaim says that even though that they started beheter because they opened the Sefer Torah, it's asur for him to go out. Chacham Ovadia does not necessarily agree with this. It seems to me from writings of Ovadia that so long as they have not started the reading of the Sefer Torah, still is mutar for him to go out, even though that the ole is saying his bracha. I mean, well, you covered the Sefer Torah at the time of bracha as well, but nevertheless, according to Arvadia, there's more leniency to be had over here. Now, we said in the Berura that's mutar to leave, given, provided that you're coming back right away, or that you listen to the entire Kriyat Torah already before. And even that is only mutar when you have extenuating circumstances. You don't want to just leave the shul and go out, right? So, if a person has not listened, comes out, according to this, Mishna Berura, and the Kaf Chaim also says something very similar, almost identical to this, that comes out that if a person has not listened to the entire Kriyat Torah from beforehand, right, you're not allowed to leave the shul, even ben gavra le-gavra, unless you ensure to be there before the next Kriyat Torah starts, next Aliyah starts, and because you have to listen, you don't want to even miss one little part, one pasuk of the Kriyat Torah, and therefore you have to come back in. Now, Chacham Ovadia does not necessarily agree with this, because there's a fundamental machloket